so that's quite impressive. Paul is the CEO and co-founder of the company airBitz, which has been voted one of the top 50 fintech companies to watch. He has flown in from San Diego along with his wife and kid. So
Thank you.
Was a bit unlucky with the weather, but I hope you will have a good time even still. We are at least very happy to have you here. So take it away.
Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming. So once again, my name is Paul Puey. I'm CEO and co-founder of airBitz. To many people, we are kind of good Bitcoin wallet for mobile, iOS, and Android, with a really key focus on making key management, private key management, really simple and familiar for users. What I'm going to talk about today is not the security of blockchain, but how the blockchain has actually motivated a completely new paradigm in security, one that we can use both for blockchain apps and actually for other conventional apps as well. So let's look at what we do today for a lot of security for digital applications. We use what's called a centralized security model, where we take data and we put it in the cloud. Right? The cloud's big. That's what every company is trying to adopt, especially IBM and Microsoft. We put it with them. However, now we have to trust the central authorities with our data. And the problem with this model is that there's many weak points to attack. You can attack the network, you can attack the servers, you have to trust these third-party storage providers, you have to trust the people with them. And because of that, we've seen that this model effectively creates a lot of the security issues we've been seeing today. And this happens both in the blockchain space, with exchanges especially, because they are effectively centralized security model, such as Mt. Gox, as well as conventional companies, like in the US, a lot of the banks have been hacked, JP Morgan Chase, a lot of the retail establishments, Home Depot in the US, even large companies which have tremendous resources like Apple have been attacked and compromised user data because there's simply too much incentive to attack this model. And this is the key problem with this model, is that the incentive structure is inverted. So what do we fundamentally think is the answer to this model? Well, we think what's called edge security is the model. Take data, and instead of securing it with central authorities, secure it at the edges of the network. Make it where individual people on their devices are the ones that have access to their own data. Encrypt it locally, and then back it up. So data is secured before it gets saved on the device, before it gets onto the network, and before it ever touches a server. So the beauty of this model is not only does it increase the difficulty to attack the system, but it also decreases the reward from any attempt at attacking, because instead of getting everybody's value, by getting into one system, you only get that individual device that you may be able to get into. One thing about this model as well, if you look at devices that access the internet, devices typically will make outgoing or incoming connections. If you are a server, globally accessible, centralized, almost certainly you're going to make some outgoing, but you're going to have to take in a tremendous amount of incoming traffic. Your personal devices, your laptop, your cell phone, 90+% are making outgoing connections. Those incoming connections you can think of as like a castle with a big moat that protects the castle, but it has to lower the drawbridge at one point in time. And it has to lower the drawbridge and hope that the right people come in, but the wrong people stay out. And that's a very hard thing to do, especially digitally. And so what has the blockchain done? What's the motivation of the blockchain? Well, for the first time ever, data is equal to money. Now, a little string of letters and numbers this big on your screen can equal any amount of data that you could possibly own that you want to put into digital currency. And so now this centralized trust model has broken down. It's no longer good enough to secure data that equals money. So the unique thing about blockchain is it's private key based. You don't log into the blockchain, you need to own this private key, which is effectively your way of authenticating to your value. And so this ecosystem of Bitcoin and blockchain has created tools that encompass this new model of edge security. Effectively, Bitcoin wallets implement aspects of edge security. Our company airBitz, then there's hardware solutions or software solutions and multi-sig solutions, as many people might have touched in this space. So people can kind of choose what type of a solution they're looking at implementing for themselves, but all of them, especially the real wallets, not the hosted ones, not the exchanges, but the real wallets implement user-controlled data. They just happen to be data of private keys. In addition, I've noticed this in talking with people in the Bitcoin and blockchain space, there's tools to do edge security. They've existed for years. Client-side encryption tools, backup and synchronization tools. These have existed, but I hardly ever ran into people that used them. Although I was talking with someone today, actually, that said, yeah, ever since Bitcoin and blockchain, I started using some of this stuff, this encryption tools that I'd never used before. Well, this is the motivation that it's created. It's forced us to learn how to use some of these new tools, or to create ones that are easy enough for the masses to use. And so once you figure out how to get private keys secured and adopted by the masses, what else can you do with that technology? Well, once you secure private keys for a blockchain, you could do other things with a public and private key. You can do public-private key authentication. This is a means of reducing the hundreds of passwords that you have to use to authenticate to many different centralized websites. Why use a username and password to authenticate to a central server when you can use a digital signature? The way you authenticate to a blockchain, use a digital signature to authenticate to a website. So this protocol, BitID, there's another one called FIDO, uses public-private key authentication, and we support this inside of airBitz in our wallet, and a few others do as well. It's an open protocol, anyone can adopt it. If you have a web server that has authentication, I encourage you to look into this, and then let others know that they can do this. It's a much easier way of authenticating, yet it's also more secure. As well, identity. Really, when you're authenticating to a website, all you're doing is proving your identity to that website. But what if we could do that on a grander scale and actually use a private key to prove our identity without giving up the identity? These are two very different things, but in our world, we're used to doing both at the same time. I want to prove I am, so I give you everything that you need to become me, which is effectively the broken model. With zero-knowledge public-private key signatures, I sign with the private, you never see it. You can prove that it's me using the public key. And that's really exciting because it changes the way we prove identity, although there is the adoption problem. How do we get enough companies, governments to use it so that we can actually deploy it? Other uses for edge security. So we talked primarily about public and private keys and using edge security for that, but really private keys are just data. If you can figure out a good way to secure the data, does it have to be a private key? Does it have to be for digital currency? Does it have to be for authentication? Well, we're excited to be using edge security for just information management, our own personal information. So your contact list, potentially even healthcare records, financial applications that have financial records, such as the Quickens and the QuickBooks and the ERPs of today. All of them either use a cloud-based model or a very, very local model where the data is not encrypted, not backed up, and it's fully user-managed. Going back to public and private keys, IoT devices. A lot of people are talking blockchain and IoT, but no one's really described exactly how those two fit. To me, the security model behind the blockchain fits IoT well, in the sense that authenticating with these devices, the potentially millions of these devices out in the world, could be made incredibly much more secure if you authenticated with them using public-private key authentication. How many have heard about the recent hack that happened a few months ago where a lot of, I believe, IoT devices, and I think they might have even been light bulbs, were attacked and used to create a DDoS attack on some of the biggest companies in the world, such as Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot? You guys, does that ring a bell? It was a few months ago, and we have short-term memory, I understand. But that hit a majority of the headlines. And that attack occurred because there was embedded in the firmware basically an admin password used to access the device. If that had been public-private key technology, we would have been able to circumvent a significant amount of that effort, if not all of it. So using that to authenticate to IoT devices, I think, is one of the key things missing in a lot of the concerns behind IoT and security and them not going well together. But private keys help that. So what's the challenge, though, with private keys and edge security? Why have we not been adopting this stuff? You know, this stuff has actually been available for almost 2 or more decades, you know, encryption and backup. Well, if you look at the way we've been doing private key management, even in the blockchain space, even though we've motivated this, look at how we've been doing it for the past couple of years. This is a screenshot of like kind of a typical Bitcoin wallet and how you do backup of those keys. One is to actually, and this is on mobile, save a PDF on mobile along with this 15-character password. Don't lose the PDF and don't lose the password, which you didn't create. So we're telling people, go do this as a means of actually the financial future. Second, this is one that people are probably more familiar with a lot of wallets. Here's 12 completely random words that we want you to write down and save and don't lose. And a bit more usable, but very alien, very unfamiliar. And so we try to define things as like, well, what's easy to use initially is at least what's familiar. So try to bring things as familiar as possible. And this is actually one of our partners that is deploying airBitz. I don't say who they are because it's a little embarrassing, even they're embarrassed by it, but this is their login subsystem into their decentralized app on Ethereum. And so in the login subsystem, you enter a password, and then it creates a username. That's your username. 300 plus upper lowercase numbers, and then they say, go save your username, and then use it to log in when you log into their decentralized app in the future. So the challenge, once again, and this is kind of an edge secure application, the keys are never given to a central party, but the usability is really, really flawed. So that's the challenge that we've had, is how do we get the stuff deployed? How do we get edge security deployed when this has been what it looks like to adopt it? And so what are we doing at airBitz to give you an idea of how we try to tackle this problem and how it fits into the ecosystem? So we've built an edge security platform that implements a lot of the nuggets of technology that have existed but have never been put together in a cohesive way. One is encryption, client-side encryption. That's the core fundamental necessity of edge security. Take data, whether they be keys or personal info, and encrypt it client-side on the user's device with their own credentials only they can unlock. And then automatically back it up, automatically synchronize it between different devices, so it just feels like you're logging in, if you're logging in on your browser, your mobile, your laptop. And then implement revision control, so if the data gets corrupted or inadvertently edited, you can roll it back, similar to cloud-based solutions. Implement two-factor authentication, so if a device is if a password is compromised, it doesn't compromise your account. And this is a big nugget. We're probably the only encryption platform that allows lost password recovery. It's a very unique little piece that many people say, did we patent? And I think I just came out of a patent discussion where I said, no, we don't patent anything. The idea is open. Our implementation is what we license. And all of that is with the familiarity of just simply creating an account, like you would do on a website or on a mobile app. No keys, nothing to write down, nothing to save, no files to save. And then we've taken this platform and actually deployed it as a single sign-on solution. So for a lot of people, how many people here use login with Twitter, Facebook, Google? Come on, oh yeah, we're all guilty. That's all good. So they're super convenient, right? One account gets you access to multiple different websites. It's a really convenient thing. The challenge is that it's very trust-based. If someone compromised my Google account or compromised Google in general, they could single sign on to every account that every user on Google used on any other website. So it's convenient, but at a compromise of trust. So what we've built is actually an edge secure model of single sign-on. We call it edge login, so that one encrypted account can effectively share encrypted data with multiple decentralized apps. Like OAuth and Facebook can't work with decentralized apps. You'll notice that none of the dApps in the Ethereum space, in the Bitcoin space, none of them use Facebook or Google because they can't actually secure private keys for users, whereas this can, such that no one has access to the keys for these dApps other than the end user, not the application provider and not airBitz. So it works with open source decentralized apps. And we have a handful of some of the biggest partners in the dApp space deploying this. I think Wings is presenting today on what their platform is doing, and they've integrated airBitz. So has Augur, the prediction market on Ethereum, and a handful of others, and there's many things that can be done with the space. What are we doing right now that I think touches the majority of people, the consumer space? Well, we have a Bitcoin wallet that people can check out if you haven't already used it. Most of our growth has been in the US, so I'd love to hear feedback from people overseas as well. And it uses the edge security model that I just presented to you to secure private keys, obviously, the big thing. But as well, in the app, you can actually put metadata for all the transactions, like you can see in this screenshot. So who did I pay? What was the fiat value? What's the category? Some notes. All of that is data that's encrypted, client-side, edge secured, backed up, and synchronized. So it's almost like a mini Quicken and QuickBooks inside of your wallet that has the full privacy of a Bitcoin wallet. All the settings of the app are all encrypted and backed up, as well as edge logging into the different decentralized apps. Those keys are all encrypted the same way with edge security. As well, built into the app is a plugin infrastructure so that third-party applications can integrate and provide value-added services such as being able to buy and sell Bitcoin. So we have two partners, one in the US in Gladera and one in Europe out of Switzerland, that allow people to buy Bitcoin in now over 20 countries. And we just launched it, I think actually literally yesterday, for all of Europe. So anywhere that you can do a SEPA transaction, you can actually buy Bitcoin inside of our app, and it's integrated so that the Bitcoin automatically shows up in your wallet in private keys you control versus them sitting on an exchange, which is the default for most platforms. That's effectively it. What I'm kind of as a recap and a summary, this space has a lot of exciting things that it's building. And the decentralized app infrastructure, the ICOs, which I just came out of a panel talking about as well, give access to more people a resource that was limited before. And in the same sense, this new paradigm in security gives access to people a security model that has been relegated before to IT departments and centralized institutions. So giving back control of people, not just to the financial aspect of their lives, but also to their own data, is what we're really excited about, and what I'm excited that this entire space is motivated. And so thanks a lot. I think we got maybe a few minutes for questions, if there are any. Cool. Thanks a lot, everybody. Oh, and if anybody doesn't already have a Bitcoin or airBitz wallet, I have a few kind of private key gift cards that I'm happy to give out for anyone that's looking to try out the app. Cool. Any questions? Yes. Sure, sure. Got it. So they'll mostly lean on our partners. So Glidera is about 1%. So that's in the US. Biddy, I think, is, I believe, 1 to 2%. I don't quote me exactly hard on that, but I believe it's within the range of what I call, not quite OTC, but brokerage style exchanges. So it's not going to be like the 0.5%, 1/4% you'd get from a full order matching exchange like a Bitstamp. But Coinbase is 1.5%, so it's lower than Coinbase, right? So yeah, better than Coinbase by a little bit, but not by a drastic large margin. It's definitely better than any of the physical services with cash. It's better than any that charge with a credit card fees and the fraud risk of them. They'll typically be in the 5 to 8%. So I'd say it's in the very reasonable range. That 1% is what we're targeting for any additional partners. And we do invite any other partners that are deploying in other regions, buy-sell services. If you have an API, it can get integrated into the wallet as well. And so we'd like to be able to support other regions. Cool. Any other question? Yes?
One of the previous talks here was about KYC.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any way to integrate that into your platform and how to kind of tie in existing identity checks?
So the question is KYC, and is there a way to integrate that into our platform? So our platform is fully anonymous, right? The actual core of our security platform, that's a key piece of our security. If we de-anonymized it, it would actually be an attack vector, because now you could identify who owns blobs of encrypted data on our service and try to brute force that data. By not knowing who owns any blob, you don't know where the value is. So you don't, even if you wanted to try to brute force encrypted data, you don't know which encrypted data has any value. So that's an important piece. Now, if you incorporated the airBitz platform into your app, such as any of the dApps that have incorporated, you're welcome to add KYC on top of it. So we don't see any of the user information, but you can on your servers collect that information as you need and see fit for your own purpose. But we want to keep our platform as anonymous as possible, because different clients might want that anonymity, but other clients may want to layer KYC on top of it. Our partners for the exchanges, though, they do ask for KYC information, some little, some less, but none of that goes to airBitz. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
Okay.
Well, cool. Thanks so much, everyone. And yeah, if anyone wants some of the private key cards, there's a little bit of Bitcoin on there. Just come to me afterwards. Thanks.